We continue our discussion of international diplomacy in the interwar period by looking at the Sudeten Crisis and the resultant Munich Agreement in 1938. And this is part 1, which will focus on the Sudeten Crisis itself. And our learning objectives include, yes, 1, understanding the causes of this crisis, and overall, understand the circumstances that led to the Munich Agreement, understand the significance of the Sudeten Crisis and the Munich Agreement in terms of collective security in the interwar period. And then, of course, you will need to analyze the impacts of the Munich Agreement on international diplomacy. Before we start talking about the crisis itself, we need to have some context, right? You guys know how I love some context. And this is also going to give you some information that you can then use as part of your analysis. So by 1938, we have Hitler has been in power in Germany for the past 5 years, and he has pretty much really consolidated power in his hands. And in that time, there have been numerous violations of the Treaty of Versailles, and these include a remilitarization of the Rhineland, a complete remilitarization of Germany. That is, he started conscription. They have a lot of industries that are now producing material for war. Again, clear violations of the Treaty of Versailles. He has united or occupied Austria, and additionally, he's created a web of influence throughout Eastern Europe. So all of those successor states that were supposed to act as a balance against Germany are now very closely aligned politically and economically with Germany. And so additionally, the rest of Europe is only now starting to begin to recover from the Great Depression. So there's still massive unemployment. Governments have limited amounts of money. People are unhappy with governments and all of, everything that's going on. And lastly, or maybe not lastly, but additionally, the international community is still dealing with the blows of Manchuria and Abyssinia. And so by this point, the League of Nations, I don't know what people are doing, but it ain't doing much. Now that we have some context, let's start talking about the Sudeten Crisis in and of itself. Now, as I hope y'all are remembering looking at this map, Czechoslovakia included a large number of German-speaking people. A small number came from Germany in and of itself. The vast majority were former Austro-Hungarians. And this was about 3.2 million ethnic Germans. And by the time we get to 1938, Czechoslovakia is in a really vulnerable position. Since Germany has united with Austria, Czechoslovakia and this Sudeten area is surrounded by areas under Hitler's control. And therefore, or part of Hitler's ideology, is the creation of a pan-German state. And so this area is then going to be something Hitler's going to turn his eye towards too. And then also, Czechoslovakia was a strategic threat to Germany. She had allies in other parts of Europe. She was doing fine economically. Hitler wants to destroy Czechoslovakia. He wants to create his pan-German state. However, Czechoslovakia has these alliances with Poland, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union, which kind of makes Hitler hesitate. Additionally, she has an easily defensible border with Germany. It's a mountain area, and so Hitler's troops, should he invade Czechoslovakia, would be at a disadvantage. Czechoslovakia has a well-supplied military. It is a functioning democracy and is socially stable, unlike the other states, the successor states. But there's always a but. She has a large number of weaknesses. And part of that stems from the creation of the state. Czechoslovakia is largely Czech and Slovak, and there's an uneasy alliance between the two. Additionally, 35% of the population are ethnic minorities. And of that, 25% of the whole population of Czechoslovakia are ethnically German. And this German population is resentful of this new state. Their position is different. These Germans largely are Habsburg, Austro-Hungarian Germans, and they had a higher position in the Austro-Hungarian Empire when compared to other minorities. And Czechoslovakia, by the time we get to 1938, does not have a border with a friendly state, basically, surrounded. And then, the Sudeten area was largely export dependent. It was the most industrialized area of Czechoslovakia, and they are going to be hard hit by the Great Depression. When all of these other states enact protectionist measures, that means that there is no market for the industrially produced goods of the area. So it's an area with high level of unemployment, higher dissatisfaction with the rest of the country and the government, and because they poor, they are more easily radicalized, which is one of those things that Hitler is going to take advantage of. Take a moment and examine this cartoon. What is the message being conveyed? Pause and remember to taco. Let's take a moment, honestly, more than a moment, to look at the situation in Sudetenland that leads to the crisis. In 1935, a dude by the name of Konrad Henlein formed the Sudeten Party. And the Sudeten Party ultimately becomes financed by Hitler. And in the 1938 elections, the Sudeten Party has significant representation in parliament. As a matter of fact, by that time, it is the single largest political party in Czechoslovakia. Initially, Heinlein and the Sudeten Party is agitating for equal treatment of Czechs with Czechs. And so what they're trying to do is, I guess, gain enough voice within the country so that they don't feel as though they are a sidelined minority. But by 1938, they're actually seeking full independence of the Sudeten lands from Czechoslovakia. And this is a factor that is going to be exploited by Hitler. Now, Hitler, as we talked about previously, there are aspects, some strengths that Czechoslovakia has that makes it somewhat difficult for Hitler to fully take over. But the Sudeten Party is going to be one of the things that's fully exploited to bring down Czechoslovakia. Additionally, Hitler is feeling pretty darn confident, right? He's done all of this stuff, remilitarized, he's taken Austria over, and France and Britain have continued to appease him. So essentially, he's looking at some pretext that's going to allow him to take this land over that France and Britain are going to, grudgingly agree with. So Heinlein says to Hitler that the policy in this whole process was to demand so much that we can never be satisfied, that the Czechoslovakian government could never satisfy them, so that the point they could get what they wanted, that is independence of the Germans from Czechoslovakia. Dun dun dun! The crisis begins basically in March. Hitler orders Heinlein to create tension within Czechoslovakia. And that quote that we previously stated, this is when they're going to be putting it into effect. In April, Heinlein is going to produce a document with a list of 8 demands that the Sudeten Germans want from the government. At the same time, or near the same time, Germany starts lining up troops along the Czech border. Ooh, it continues. In July, Hitler promises to France and Britain that he's not going to invade Czechoslovakia. He's not going to be aggressive and create an act of war if he's given Sudetenland, right? It's just like, if you make me happy, then I won't make you cry. In September 1938, the Czechoslovakian president, Beneš, concedes those 8 demands. He's like, okay, Sudeten Germans, we're going to work with you. He is also feeling pressured because he has Germany along his borders. And again, the Sudeten Germans are a quarter of the total population. But after the Sudeten government says, okay, we'll work with you, it hasn't gone as far as as Heinlein and Hitler needs it to. So then these leaders, the Sudeten German leaders, start uprisings and riots, etc., throughout the Sudetenland area to maintain pressure on Beneš and the Czechoslovakian government. The Czechoslovakian government declares martial law, and they send soldiers to the area to suppress things. And they're actually doing a decent job and keeping control. And here come France and Britain to kind of ruin everything. Everything. The prime ministers of Britain and France, that is Chamberlain and Daladier, enter into direct negotiations with Hitler. And there is the fear that Hitler would become directly involved in Czechoslovakia as he had in Austria. And essentially, Hitler pulled the government of Austria down and was able to annex the country. Now, here comes your favorite parts. That's right, I know you love it. The red questions. So, why is the crisis for France and Britain, why is this crisis a choice between Czech concessions or outright war? And the second one is, why would the situation in Czechoslovakia raise the ghost of 1914 for France and Britain? Check you later!